Hello, I'm here to answer some of your questions that you sent me. I just finished an audition this morning, so I have nothing until I have to do my taxes tonight, so I'm pretty excited. So I'm going to answer a bunch of your questions that you sent. The dogs are being total goofballs over here by my side. I have not even read these yet, so I'm really excited to see what they say and go ahead and answer them. So let's just start on the first one here. Let's see, we have, can you talk more about your time on the cruise ship, like how contracts work, what it was like, the audition process, etc. So, what a question. So, I guess how I auditioned for my cruise ship was I actually sent in a tape. I sent in a tape my senior year of college. So I did not get cast in the last semester of my senior year at my program, which is pretty unheard of, and I was feeling really down. So I was like, screw this, I'm not going to be sad, I'm going to audition. So I spent pretty much all of my time sending in tapes all around and getting myself set up for professional gigs. So in this case, I saw this call for what's called Poet Theatricals, which I don't think exists anymore, but it's a Cirque company, and they are one of the groups that cast for cruise ships, or at the time they did. And they had about 50 pages worth of material to record, and they sent tracks and stuff. It was just up on their website, so I just went to their website, I saw it there, and I spent a weekend recording. So I sent in the tapes, and I didn't hear anything back for months. I didn't even know that they got my material. So I sent that in January, and in October of that same year, after I'd graduated, after I'd done several more gigs, they emailed me and asked me if I wanted to come to Barcelona and join the cruise ship. So a week later, I was in Fort Lauderdale, and I was doing rehearsals, and I had to speed through all of these medical things that you have to do in order to get on the ship. You have to do a bunch of medical tests, and so I had to speed through those in a week. I went to Florida, and 12 days later, I was in Barcelona. So that was pretty wild. That's not really how it usually works, but that's not to say it can't work like that. What happened, I found out later, was that a woman who had the role I had dropped out 2 weeks before she was supposed to depart, or embark, I suppose. And so they needed someone. They went through their files, and they found me, and they said, good enough. In reality, I was really too young to be in that role. Usually they're looking for people in their late 20s, early 30s, and I was 22, almost 23. So I was not really what they were looking for, but, you know, desperate times. So I benefited from that, and so they usually will hold auditions, and they will have you come in and do a bunch of material for them, maybe do some dance calls. It's more like a traditional rehearsal process. Now here's the interesting thing about cruise ships is that they'll essentially cast you in what's called a casting pool. And so instead of saying, you auditioned, great, I have this role on a ship for you. Usually what happens is you audition, and then you end up, if they like you, you end up in this like casting pool. And so over the next 2 years, 2 years is the typical sort of length of time for this, when they're looking for a 5'6" brunette soprano, they'll look at their pool and they'll pull from that, and they'll cast you, because they have all these contracts, all these rolling contracts. They generally have many ships going out, and they all are departing at different times and different casts and all of this stuff. It's a big machine, and so they are often, or if someone leaves and they suddenly need someone to fill what's called like the F1 or F2, female 1, female 2 role or something, they will look into their pool and go, okay, who can fill this? And so sometimes it's really specific, because remember that these shows run for like a decade on the ships. And so what they had the first cast be, that's what they're trying to emulate. I was what's called EQ9. I was on the Equinox ship, so I was EQ, which is the shorthand for Equinox, 9, ninth cast. So 8 other casts had come through and worn these same costumes and done these same tracks. And so the costumes do have leeway in them and some give room, and they alter them a little bit, but I couldn't be so far out of the bounds of who the original was that I couldn't fit. So they could not have put someone in who was 5 foot. The original must have been like 5'7" or something. Oh, hi, Tali. Must have been like 5'7" or something, because they were a little short for me, but they worked. But if I had been like 6'2", they would not have worked. Like, they couldn't have altered them that much. So the calls will often be really, really, really specific about what they're looking for because they have to fit into these sort of molds, so to speak, with very little leeway. And now, if they're doing a new cast, everything's out the door. You know, they can kind of cast whoever. So that was kind of my casting process in getting in. I was on a ship that was a pretty typical contract amount. It was 8 months or so. So I got on, sorry, my nose is really runny. It's March. So I got on in beginning of November of 2013, and I left in end of June 2014. And I started my rehearsals in October. So I was there for 8 months, and that's pretty typical for performers. If you are a musician, it's more typical to go 3 to 4 months, and that's just a different kind of can of worms. You go through an agency, and they sort of have a pool of musicians that they'll pull from. It's a lot less finicky because, you know, they're not trying to fit costumes or anything. So 3 to 4 months for musicians or party band or things like that. For performers in the cast, I would say 8 to 10 months is pretty typical. I've seen people get extended to 12. And then for the acrobats, it's usually a 12-month contract. And then they have to take a required month off. You can't just stay permanently on a ship. A lot of people will, like, get new contracts, but Chewie, hey. Delicate little growls. Chewie, no, shh. Okay. So, you have to take a month off. It's required by the rules. So, Chewie, shh. It's okay. I'm sure whoever it is not going to kill us. This is my front windows right here, so he's sitting and looking outside, and apparently there's someone really bad out there. So, anywho, let's see, what did I miss in that question? Time on the cruise ship, how the contracts work, what it's like. What it's like is like, imagine you are in a shoebox for 8 months with no phone or internet, and you sometimes get to go to Rome. That's what it's like. You live in the smallest room, and I had one of the biggest rooms on the whole ship because I was a production singer. So I was very lucky. He's still very upset. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but I had one of the biggest ships. I had a single room. I had my own bathroom. Those things were in high commodity. Harrison had a very, very small room, even smaller than mine, where literally you could walk in, there was a desk, and then your bed folds over the desk, and that's it. That's all it is enough room for a desk. That's it. And then they share a bedroom or a bathroom with another person in what they call the shoilet, the shower toilet combo, where it's literally like you could sit on the toilet and have the shower like on you. I did not have that. Lucky me. So it's really small. There's not a lot of room. It really depends on what ship you're on, what kind of environment you have. Mine was not very nice to crew members, and I mean, at the end of the day, the reality is that the performers get paid way too much money for how little we work. I worked 3 days out of every 12. I worked for like 4 hours out of those days. I worked, I had an 8:45 show and a 10:45 show, p.m. The rest of the day and the rest of the time, I pretty much got to do whatever I wanted. That being said, there are definitely rules. I can't swim in the pool. I can't do a lot of things, but meaning like the time was my own. I wasn't working. I didn't have any other duties because I was a singer. We are the closest thing to guests that you can really get to without being a guest entertainer, which is like when famous people come on board to do shows or whatever. So we get paid way too much for how little work we do. And most of the people on board get paid way too little for how much they work. They work 12 to 14 hours a day. They get like 6 hours off in between. They work so hard and they make so far below minimum wage because it's international waters and because it is more than what a lot of the people are Filipino on my ship or Eastern European, a lot of people from India, but that doesn't make it acceptable to pay them how little they paid them. And so there was a lot of bitterness about why do you Americans get to get paid so much And it's not fair, and so I understand why they didn't like us very much. Of course, I always try to be really nice and tip everyone a lot of money when I get coffees and stuff, and because I want to be judged for who I am, not for who other people have been in the past. But, I'm working against a stereotype. A lot of performers on ships are not very nice, and they are kind of nasty, and they're entitled, and they are very demanding, and so I'm working against a big stereotype there, and so a lot of people don't like us, and they try to use what little power they have. Maybe they work up in the guest buffet, so I'd go up there and they'd say, you can't be here today, and they can say that, and who am I going to argue? How am I going to argue with it? I'm not going to go say, I'm going to go talk to HR, it's like, that's not going to help anything. So that combativeness on board, that was on my ship. Harrison's worked on like 4 other ships, so he has said every ship has a kind of different sort of environment. One of them, the performers were treated like celebrities, and that was not the case for me. But, at the end of the day, it's just kind of what kind of ship it is, and sometimes the like Australia ships have a different sort of environment because you're at sea so much more, so they're called like sick ships, where it's almost always quarantined because they don't get off on land very often. I did 2 transatlantics, so it's like 10 days at sea. It's very eerie not seeing the land for that long, but it's just different ship to ship. I loved doing it when I did it. I got to see maybe 50 different cities, 25 different countries. I went all the way to Istanbul. I went to Greece, and I saw Rome, and I went to Paris, and all of these amazing things, and I could not do that. I met Harrison. That rocked. Like, our first date was in Spain. What? That's so cool. So I really enjoyed that. I loved making as much money as I did. I would not own a home right now and have dogs and have like the life I have if I did not save so much on the ship. So it was an incredible opportunity right out of college. I would not do it again because the lifestyle is really hard. You get paid a lot because it's very hard to stay seriously like sane for 8 months. You get so bored. You get so like restless. I kid you not, there'd be times when I'd be like, I could brush my teeth another 2 times today and waste another 6 minutes if I like really stretched it. Or like, I took 3 showers today, but like I could take 1 more. Because at sea, you have nothing to do all day. And even out in port, sometimes the ports are not amazing, or you've been to them, 100 times, or maybe you're quarantined or something. So it's like, you just get really bored. And I binged watched Breaking Bad and Dexter and all of these shows. I read like 1 million books. But at a certain point, you're like, I just really want to be home and like have autonomy and be able to enjoy my life again. So it's really hard. It's not an easy job at all because managing boredom, which I am a hobbyist. I'm very good at managing boredom. But even I, at month 8, was like, get me off this ship. So it's really tough. It's a tough job. You don't see your family. Phone and internet costs like 19 cents a minute, so you're not using it, it's not easy. It's really hard. But, and it's a really great opportunity right out of college before you have any like roots, because once you have roots, it's a lot harder to do. So, hope that answered that. Let me know if that sparks any more questions. I have stories for days. All right, next one. Now that I've spent almost 15 minutes on this one. All right, I'm a teen trying to choose what I want to do with my life. I want to pursue music or theater, but how do I know if I should? Would you recommend starting auditions right after high school? Would you say it is important to go to school to get a degree? Do directors care? Does it provide essential info? Do you think it would be feasible to pursue another major and audition for stuff on the side? Or get a degree in something else and put this on hold until after? This is from Jordan. All right, Jordan. So I look at it this way. A degree is not the only way to pursue theater at all. There's a lot of different ways to pursue this career. But keep in mind that the people you're going to be competing with in auditions, most of them will have a degree in theater or comparable education. That's going to mean they spent 4 years plus dedicating pretty much their whole life to learning about acting, singing, dancing, auditioning, the business world, all of this stuff. So, that being said, you're going to be competing with those people. And it's kind of like, no matter how good you were in high school, it's going to be very hard to compete with that. They're just going to have a higher knowledge base than you. That doesn't mean you can't audition, and that doesn't mean you won't ever get anything. But your competition is going to be pretty tough, and you're going to have to supplement your education somehow. Whether that means classes, whether that means like independent classes, whether that means getting a coach or, going to college or whatever it is, you have to supplement your education somehow. I think of it this way. If you were going to if you wanted to be a therapist, and I was like, I'm really good at talking to people, so I'm going to be a therapist. One, you couldn't even get licensing. But let's ignore the licensing part and just say, I'm really good at talking to people. Almost all therapists in the field, unless they're just like a life coach, are going to have the credentials and the education, and they're just going to have a much bigger knowledge base than you. And so it's like, how do you compete with people who just have years and years of experience on top of you? All right, you either have to go get education somewhere or you have to go to school. It's the same thing with theater. I think the hard thing is that whatever degree you choose in theater, it's a terminal degree. Meaning, you could go to high school and then go and do it professionally. That is possible. You could go to get your undergrad and then go and do it professionally. Also possible. You could go to your master's degree and then go do it professionally. You get your PhD. Every single one could be your last one if you wanted to. But you have to think about, what are your goals? Do you just want to do community theater? Like, just do stuff on the side? Then you don't really need to go get a degree. Go and get another degree, audition on the side. Maybe sometimes you'll get to do professional stuff. But if you want to do this only, you need to get education somehow, somewhere, and what is right for everyone is not the same. I'm not going to say that everyone needs to get a BFA because that's not true. And I think the hard thing is a lot of people will always reference those people who went right to Broadway after high school. And I just implore you to remember that those people are the exceptions to the rule, not the rule themselves. Having been in this industry for 10 years now, I see a lot of people. I have a lot of friends on Broadway. I have a lot of friends on Broadway tours, on ships, on doing all sorts of really amazing stuff that I'll never get to do. And watching their process is long and arduous. And those people that just kind of get handed it, one, they were never really handed it. It's just what it seems like. But, it's not the rule. It's the exception. So don't assume that's going to happen because almost certainly won't. So the other question was how should I know if I should pursue this? I can't really answer that for you because it's really a personal thing. I mean, you want to... I'm so sorry. I'm going to grab him 1 second. Chewy, come on. You're fine. Come here. He just got a haircut, so he's so cute. What a little bear. All right, hon. You guys sit down. So, anywho, while he calms down, he's so happy. I can't really answer that because I don't know what level you're at, but auditioning is a great way to see where you're at with your knowledge. Oh, it's the mailman. That's really scary. Shh, it's okay. All right. Go ahead. Go free. Sorry. I'm just going to have a minute and a half of barking. Chewy. Yeah. All right, we're done. Auditioning is a great way to see where you're at because if you don't get gigs, that doesn't mean you're bad, and that it could just be, some seasons you don't get gigs or whatever. It's no guarantee. But if you're consistently getting feedback that you're not at the same level of those around you, then it's a good indication of, I need to go get more education, or maybe I'm not fit for this. The reality is, not everyone is good enough to do this, or skilled enough, or wants to live this life. I have a lot of friends who got BFAs with me who did not pursue theater professionally. In fact, most of them did not. And for a variety of reasons, some people found something else they like better. Often it's somewhat related to theater, or theater got them into it. But also, some people discovered that it was not the life they wanted. The reality of auditioning like this and getting all this rejection and so much uncertainty and no steady paycheck and this and that and this and that. The reality was not a life they wanted. And that is a completely fair realization. That doesn't mean they're a failure. It's just, it was a realization of that's not the life I want. So I'm going to take these skills that I learned and I'm going to go do something else. So I can't really make the decision for you, but I would just evaluate what do you want in life and do some serious research about what it's really like to be an actor. Because the Instagrams of Broadway stars are not a good representation. Do some real research on what, how do you really make a living doing this? What's it really like? Because it's really hard. It's really tough. Anywho, hope that answered. Let me know if that sparks anything else. Ba-da-ba. What do you do when you feel stuck? Well, like I said earlier, I'm such a hobbyist. I love having projects. And I think that when I feel stuck, I really go to a project of some kind. Some of it's theater related, some of it's not. So I think, okay, well, I'm not getting what I want right now, so I'm going to go work on my book. I'm going to go work on my garden. I'm going to go cook something. I'm going to go take a class. I'm going to go work on my website, or I'm going to develop my Patreon or my blog or something. So I think about, I have all of these, I call it cobbling. I have all these different things going on in my life, and a lot of them are part of my job. A lot of them are hobbies. And I think about, okay, if one aspect of my life is not going how I want it to, how can these other things help and feed into that? And then on top of that, what other things could I develop? Maybe I need some new headshots, or maybe I want to, I don't know, make some new connections, network, go to some more auditions, find some new rep, go see some new shows. I mean, whatever it is, can that feed into my main goals? And two, what will that, will that fulfill me in a different way? I find that working on other projects helps fulfill me and keeps me from getting down on myself and feeling like I'm a failure, I suck, I should give up. I think about, you know what? It's all a flow. Sometimes things are going great, sometimes things are not, and when things aren't, I just have to find something new to put myself into, and it'll all come around and it'll all be great. I think about with this blog, I started this blog right when I got back on the ship. Well, it was a blog before that, but it was like a fandom blog more so. So I got back from the ship, and I had been gone for 8 months, and people were like, whoa, tell me about your life. And I was like, sure. And so that's how this started. And that was like 3.5 years ago. And I didn't have a lot happening in my life at that point. I finished the ship. I needed to take some time off. I was moving to Minnesota, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I don't want to get a 9-to-5 job. What am I going to do? And I was a lot of question marks. And so I put a lot of time into my blog because I was like, well, who knows what'll happen with this, but I enjoy doing it. I feel like I learn from it. I'm meeting some great people. Who knows? And down the road, obviously, it turned into voice lessons, and it turned into like most of what I make my living from. And so that was an example of, okay, I'm feeling stuck is a little extreme of a word, but I'm feeling like I don't know what to do. Ugh. And I was like, all right, well, I have this project. I'm going to devote myself to this project then. And it kind of paid off. And I do think that things pay off. We might not always know how, but they will. So that's what I do when I'm stuck, is I do more hobbies. What are some of your favorite warm-ups or vocal exercises, and why do you use them, and what do they help with? Are there any that you think work for everyone regardless of range, timbre, tone, etc.? Do you use the same exercises, modify the exercises, or use completely different ones when you are working with a large group rather than a soloist? Well, I'm going to start backwards. So when I'm working with a large group, my warm-ups are not for technique. They're just to get your voice going. And kind of, I don't know any other phrase other than get your voice going. I mean, in the reality, I don't really believe in warm-ups, and I'm going to explain that before it sounds horrible. So the way my technique works is that we are working to make your voice work so fully on muscle memory that you do not need to do, a half hour of warm-ups in order for it to function properly. That being said, there are sometimes outside factors that are going to impact your voice. Allergies, sickness, weather, fatigue, other things. And then you might need to do, I call them exercises, in order to really get things lining up. I think of your voice as like a machine or something, and sometimes we need to kind of get it going a little bit, or kind of get things back in line. So when we're singing, it's like this big juggling act. We're working on our support and our mouth position and our soft palate and our throat and our this and our that and all of these things. And sometimes something's a little out of whack, but the goal in my technique is to get these things all working without us having to think about them all at once. Getting them working automatically, which means you should be able to get up in the morning and just do it. That doesn't mean exercises can't help, but I don't really believe in like, if I don't do these exercises, I won't be able to use my voice how I want to. I don't really think that's how it works. At least at the point of my technique that I'm at. When I was younger and I didn't have this technique, yes, I needed that because I didn't know how my voice worked. So I'm not saying warm-ups are stupid or that no one should use them, but for what I'm doing and where I'm at and how my technique works, I don't believe in them for me. Now, the reason I say the word exercise is because I look at them more as a chance to be working on this muscle memory, getting your muscle memory activating how we want it to, and becoming second nature. So that's what my exercises are about. It's not really about like getting your voice going. Like I said, in a big group, but I'm not gonna in a big group be like, everyone lower your larynx. I'm like, I don't know where you're at in your voice. I'm not gonna make assumptions on that. So in that case, I just kind of throw that out the window and I just do what, I do familiar exercises. Nothing too hard, just things to kind of get your voice going. On my own, was it about myself or like for myself? What are some of the exercises? What do you say? Mm-hmm. I'm gonna pretend that this is about what are my favorite exercises for me. That's what I'm gonna pretend that that's what the question was, because I'm not sure if you meant for others or for me. Because for others, I gear it towards the person 100%. I create exercises from kind of a pool of things I'm used to. I create them for the person. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing because people are in different places. For myself, if I had like 5 minutes, what I would do, like this morning, I had an 11 a.m. audition. And so it's not super early, but it's not like I've done a bunch of talking. I didn't have any lessons before. So it was kind of the first time I'd made sound that day. So this morning what I did was I did a couple foghorns, which is that like, ooh, that thing, if you're unsure about it. In the last Q&A, the previous one, I talked about how to do it. So foghorns to kind of get my throat remembering how to work and making sure that I've released tension. A lot of the time overnight, we kind of start to engage some more tension here, so to release that. And then I would do some diaphragm pulses. So just going, ha, and getting my abdominal muscles activating. And so I would do those two things to kind of just get those kind of two main concepts, support and laryngeal position, are the two things that I'm really most concerned with in myself, because everything else sort of plays off of those. So I try to really get those set up. If I was going to be belting, I might do a couple of like, hey, things like that, or maybe go, yeah, just something to kind of get my placement going. If I was doing more legit, I would do much more round things, oh, things to really get the placement going there. I guess placement is what I would do, is specify placement for myself so I knew where I was going to go. I would keep it really simple. I don't really go very extreme with my exercises unless I'm sick. If I'm sick or something, then I do exercises more to figure out where am I at and what am I going to be competing against. Like, what is my voice going to do that I'm not sure about? That's when I do exercises a lot more, because I need to know what's going to happen when I open my mouth. Otherwise, I pretty much know what's going to happen when I'm going to sing something. So those are kind of the main things I would work on. For an individual, if I was talking to a student about like, okay, and I do this when we talk about auditions, I talk about, okay, here are the things that, if you had 5 minutes, here's the things I would do right before your audition. And it's different for different people. And I would think about, what are your main concerns? What are the main things that you're looking at with your voice and your obstacles in the song and stuff, and tailor your exercises towards that. Don't just blindly do some things to get your voice going. Think about if a challenge is, okay, I know it's going to be hard for me to belt this note, or I know that I have a lot of long phrases, and so my breath support is really important. Gear your exercises towards those things to help make sure that your body is ready for whatever's coming. So that's kind of my recommendation there. I think I have 2 more. Someone asked this for your last video, so you might not have a new response, but if you do, any songs or monologues that you used to have in your book and why you don't use them anymore. If I'm honest, I do not even remember someone asking me that before. I mean, most of them are things that were not overdone that now are overdone. Like, Life I Never Led used to be in my book. Not anymore. It's too popular. And that was like right when Sister Act came out. Most things that were in my book are in my backup book now. So I have kind of like a set of main songs and a set of backup songs. Because often when I go in for a show, let's say I sang some like high belt piece or something. Often they'll be like, can you show me another one of those? And I'll be like, yeah, here's my secondary one. And that usually is my old one, the one I used to use. So for instance, my secondary belt piece is Once More I Can See from Wonderland. It's kind of a little over, I'm going to say common, borderline overdone, but I figure if they're asking for a secondary piece, they're not going to be pissed that I brought in something that's more common, because I'm like, I don't know, you asked for a second piece. Trying to think of from my legit. There's some I don't want to share, so I'm trying to think of ones I can share. I sometimes have A Little Bit in Love as one of my backup ones. It's a really sweet little song, but I wouldn't use it as a main song because it doesn't showcase enough for my voice. It would showcase more in a different kind of voice, but for me it's like I have better choices. I just have better options. And that's the second reason I usually swap something out, is I find something that's just a better representation of my voice. It once was kind of something I slotted in as like, I'll use this for now, and then I found something better. So, sorry, I don't have more answers than that. I guess for monologues, I don't know. I don't get to do monologues very much anymore. I haven't done a play since college, but most of them are just ones that don't fit my age range. Like, I could do them in college, but now I can't do them because they're out of my age range. Meaning, I was able to do something a little older when I was in college, and now that I'm in the real world, I still read as, like, 20. Someone asked me the other day if I was in undergrad. They're like, oh, are you at the U of M at the Guthrie program? And I was like, no, I'm not. So, I can't play something in their 30s yet. So I took those out of my book. Last but not least. Hey, this is going to come out under 40 minutes. Great. Where do you start when working with a new student? How do you start with someone who's a complete beginner? Do you give homework? Is there anything you recommend students work on their own, either before they get a teacher or during a break with their teacher? Ooh, so many good questions. So let's start with the first one. Where do you start with working with a new student? Well, the first things I ask, and if you've ever taken lessons with me, I've asked these questions to you. I ask, what's something you love about your voice? And everyone really stresses about that one. But I think it's an important question because I want to know what things you really value in your voice, because it tells me a lot about you. And I also think it sets the tone for, this is not a place for me to tell you you're bad. This is a place where we learn and grow, and I respect your accomplishments up till this point. You know, I'm not here to just be like, throw it out the window. I hate what you've done. It's a place for us to say, here's where you're at. Let's learn more. The second thing I ask is, what obstacles do you have in your voice, or things that you've heard that you're like, I wish I could do that, or things that you want to get better at. So I get to get a sense of your goals and how to, curate our lessons together. I usually ask about your history with singing. Some people are like, I've literally only sung in the shower. And some people are like, no, I've had like 8 voice teachers. So that gives me a sense too of what your background's going to be. And then I explain how my technique works. And then we just jump into some exercises. And day one, I usually do kind of a broad stroke of a lot of different concepts. Usually in lessons, I really look at 1 or 2 concepts really specifically. And we do exercises really geared towards them. And this plays into what I ask them to do on their own. I will give them an exercise, and my goal really is to say, I want you to understand why we do this thing. I don't want you to just blindly do it because I told you to do it. I want you to know how it's helping you. So we're going to do this exercise where we're going to really kind of focus in on this one concept, play around with it, explore it, get curious about it. Then on your own, you can work on it independently, and you're going to come up with questions. There's going to be things you don't understand. That's okay. We will come back together and keep talking about it. But the first day, we kind of just look at a lot of different concepts because I want to give you sort of a broad look at all of this stuff, so that, not all, but many things, so that you get a sense of how I work and what it's going to be like. So let's see, what was the next question? How do I start working with someone who's a complete beginner? The same way I work with someone who's advanced, meaning we just work with where you're at and we move from there. And that's where I think that it's not about where you're at or like who's the best. It's just about taking the knowledge you have and building from there. And if you're advanced, if you're advanced, then we're at a different starting place. But it's the same way. We start with the foundational stuff and we just slowly build. So it's, we just work on your goals, no matter where you're at. Homework, sort of. I give a lot of guidance on how to do useful practice. From there, it's kind of up to the student to do that useful practice. My biggest goal, honestly, is to get people to get curious about their voice. I want them to wonder about things. I want them to try something and go, oh my gosh, that felt different. How did that feel? I'm going to do that again. I want to explore that. I want them to notice things. I mean, I think if anyone's taken lessons with me for any amount of time, hopefully what they've seen is that they suddenly notice more than they did about their voice at the beginning. They become more aware. They become more, again, curious. And they can pick out things they couldn't before. It's really fun to watch. So I'm constantly asking students, what did that feel like? How was that different? And sometimes their answer is like, I don't know, it didn't feel different. And that's fine. But I always ask because I want people to be thinking about it. And eventually they hit a point where they go, it felt kind of more open. And I'm like, great, okay, let's keep going from there. And then eventually we get to the point where they're like, all right, I really felt the forward motion in that one, and I really felt it resonating against my teeth, and it was so anchored down here, but what I felt was that I could feel a tightening in the throat. I mean, we become so fluid together with our communication about what's happening with your voice, but it takes time. I would never expect that day one, but we start with just little things, and I always tell people there's no wrong answer. You could be like, I don't know, that felt like a balloon in my mouth, and I'd be like, great, good imagery, let's keep going, So it's really all about kind of creating that vocabulary together. In terms of working on your own, my main advice is that I'd rather have you work for 5 minutes of dedicated technique practice than an hour of just random singing and warm-ups. That's not to say you can't just randomly sing for fun. Go for it. But if we're talking about practice, I would rather have 5 minutes of you really getting curious about your voice and doing exercises that are very focused and have a purpose. Because when I was younger, I thought practicing was literally just like, I'll just sing the song more and it'll get easier, I guess. And in ways it did because I became more familiar with it. But I didn't really learn anything. So I try to help people look at practice as less about the amount of time you're doing stuff and more about what you're doing. So that's really my main goal in between practice, is just to get you in the habit of it and becoming focused, because it's hard. It feels like, is this enough? Am I doing, good work here? But any time that you are just playing and getting curious, you're learning more, and that's good enough. So, let's see. I think that was it. Let me double check. That's it. Yay. Okay. Well, thanks for hanging out with me for 37 and a half minutes. And this is perfect because Harrison hasn't gotten home yet, so the dogs haven't started barking again. Yay, good. But thanks for hanging out, and if you guys want to see another one of these, just let me know. And these are some awesome questions, a great variety of different things, so that there's a little something for everyone. So, all right, I'll see you later. Bye.